sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed, to be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers. In the face of cynicism, darkness, brutality around us and within, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb. Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new. Those words from the late Jack Mendelson. I would invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing If Every Woman in the World. It's printed in your insert. The words are printed in your insert, on your insert, and we're going to be led by the Soul Singers.
Soul Singers will sing it through the first verse once, and then we invite you all to join in the first verse again and all the rest of the verses.
Thank you.
Please remain standing for the chalice, if you are standing, for the chalice lighting and the doxology. And would our chalice lighters come forward, please? And you have to use the one that's also an extinguisher today. The mic.
Let this flame be to us a symbol of the wholeness we seek.
Its glow reminding us of the sacred bonds that link us to all living things.
Its radiance calling us to cast the light of freedom, justice, and peace upon all the world. Please be seated. Good morning and welcome. I am the Reverend Susan Milner. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. It is my honor to serve as interim minister to this congregation. We gratefully acknowledge the Patuxet Wampanoag people on whose ancestral lands we gather today. We commit to support and honor their culture and their history. We welcome all of you here within the walls of the sanctuary today, and also those of you who are joining us online through Zoom. We are glad to have you all, members, friends, newcomers. Our kids, we're just glad for everyone to be together today. And whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you are on your journey, whatever your age, for this hour at the very least, we welcome you among us, and we're glad that you're here, and we want you to be part of us. Everyone here is invited to coffee hour following the service in the assembly hall, through that door, through the parlor, and at that end of the building. If you're visiting today, please consider taking a red mug in coffee hour so that we can give you a particularly warm first parish greeting. Two quick announcements today. First of all, the Duxbury Interfaith Council has begun its annual food drive for families in need. At this time of year, there's a box in the parlor into which you are invited to put gift cards. You can use the Venmo, whatever it's called, icon, or leave a check, and this is for fundamental items and pantry needs, and please be generous with that. And also, please note that this week on Tuesday evening, the small group ministry of this church is inviting you to drop into an online gathering if you just need to be together with someone on Tuesday evening, election night, and I'm inviting you to drop in on an online gathering on Wednesday evening. We probably aren't going to know much of anything, but if you just need to be together and maybe take a little bit of meditative time and have some conversation, the Zoom link was in last week's distro, and we will send it out again. Again, welcome to all of you here today. It's really and truly good to be with you. And now, if someone will start us, we will sing our children out so that they can go downstairs and have their own worship and have some fun. Our first reading today is one that has made its way around Unitarian Universalist circles in the past few years and is showing up again right now. It's a long poem, and so I'm not going to read all of it, but some of the critical parts of it. What to Tell the Children by Rachel Kahn. Tell them that this is the Great Awakening. Tell them that we humans have made some huge mistakes, and that's how we find ourselves in this tenuous place. Teach them that hate is the poison. Teach them that love is the remedy, that it is even better to be readied for what comes next, even if the revelation is painful. Tell them that this is the paradigm shift, that the old is collapsing in on itself, that this death rattle is simply a temper tantrum, the last gasp of a dying Goliath. Remind them of how wild they get when they are most tired and then pass out. That's what this is about. Tell them that everything is not okay, and knowing that is okay. Tell them that pretending that what is unacceptable is fine is what got us to this spot on the timeline. Teach them that there are good people and bad people from every background, ethnicity, and belief system, that they must align themselves with kindness, that there is no more time for divisiveness. You tell them that just because something is legal, that doesn't mean it's right. You tell them to stand up and fight. Remind them that Rosa Parks righteously broke a law and the world took notice, that Harriet Tubman is our modern-day Moses, that women would not be allowed to vote and no one would have proposed another notion if the blessed rebels hadn't taken a stand. Tell them love will win this war, but only if we remember that love is not just one unending cuddle puddle, but fierce as a mother bear protecting her cubs. Tell them that they must not despair. There is possibility, and we willingly open ourselves to new ways of being because the old way is not working, has never worked, and the world deserves better, and we're worth it. Tell them that they are not free while another suffers enslavement. Teach them that we are all limbs in one body and we cannot chop off our own arm without deep suffering. Teach them humility, but also to relearn, to trust their intuition and beg their forgiveness for unintentionally misleading them previously. Tell them their gifts are useful. Tell them they are beautiful. Tell them they are the truth. And now I invite you into a spirit of prayer and meditation. When there is so much turmoil in the world, so many struggles to be had, so much that awaits our effort, our energy, our transforming love. Grant us, O Spirit of life, in this moment, peace of heart and mind. Let peace flow through us like the rush of an evening breeze, the rising light of the morning sun, the glimmer of stars at night. Let it restore us to go into the world again with wholeness and resolve. Peace be unto these our people. Peace be unto all. Let us hold the peace as we now enter into the silence. May our hopes and dreams take flight on the wings of love. Amen. Blessed be. Besides our weekly offering of resources to support the many ministries of this congregation, the only thing I want to invite you to be as generous as you can with this morning is your love, your support of each other, your presence, your focus on what's good and true and decent, what saves us. Be as generous with it as you can. The morning offering will now be gratefully accepted. My second reading this morning is from A Wind in the Door by Madeleine L'Engle. And one character is talking with another who has been confronting evil and is very down about it. My dear, this is not like you. With my intellect, I see cause for nothing but pessimism and even despair. But I can't settle for what my intellect tells me. That's not all of it. What else is there? Mrs. Murray's voice was low and anguished. There are still stars which move in ordered and beautiful rhythm. There are still people in this world who keep promises, even little ones like your cooking stew over your Bunsen burner. You may be in the middle of an experiment, but you still remember to feed your family. That's enough to keep my heart optimistic no matter how pessimistic my mind. And you and I have good enough minds to know how very limited and finite they really are. The naked intellect is an extraordinarily inaccurate instrument. It's a tense election season, isn't it? You can almost, feel people constricting their muscles and holding their breath. On Thursday, I went to the Freeport, Maine town hall to turn in my ballot. Now don't worry, it's not a bad story. Everyone there was lovely, but I was in for a surprise. On the lawn of this small New England town hall stood 3 very large, bright pink sculptures that looked like they had escaped from Sesame Street. The figures are shaggy and soft and appear to be made from strips of cloth, and beside them is a sign that says they are for hugging. Wow, I thought, someone is so concerned about the national mood that they provided a way for voters to hug out their anxiety. And we do need to hug each other right now. I'm giving hugs away. We need to appreciate the stars overhead, like the advice in the second reading. We need to feed each other's and ourselves, soul and spirit and body. And clearly it's what I need, because it turns out that my theory about the sculpture says more about me than it said about the art. The real story is better. Artist Pamela Moulton created the sculptures from reclaimed fishing gear, and she did it with the help of 5,000 volunteers, including some who fish the waters of Casco Bay for a living. And the installation is part of a year-long project for students and community members to make art from recycled materials, and also to engage in events and go to lectures to learn about climate change in coastal ecosystems. It's a great thought right now, isn't it? That we have the power to reclaim life from destruction, hope from death, hope from the clash of worlds. And so it is that this morning I hope and I pray that in time we might reclaim a vision for our democracy from the division and rancor and frankly brutality in which we find ourselves now. Now, it's not my place to encourage you to vote for any particular candidate. The IRS is clear about ministers not electioneering, though let me add that conservative Christian clergy do it proudly all the time. Nor do I think you need that. I don't even think this morning you need me to encourage you to vote, which I'm allowed to do. But it is perfectly all right and true to my vows as a minister of this faith to speak to issues and values. And it's from that perspective that no matter who wins or takes this election, I would call us, all of us, to realize that at its core, this election is about us. Regardless of how weak or strong, how unlikely or disturbing some candidates might be, this election reveals how we as a people, with our greatest aspirations and our deepest flaws, will navigate the troubled waters of conflicting values. And yes, of course, I mean, if voting works, if it's allowed to work as it should, the people will decide who the next president or senator or representative or council person or school board member will be. But it's more than that. In recent years, you know it, the worst impulses of exclusion and hatred have surfaced dramatically in American life. They've been given permission to parade in the public square and on the airwaves without shame or consequence. Racism against immigrants and people of color, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, transphobia, and the most blatant misogyny publicly expressed in my life. We can blame this or that candidate or party, and there's truth. There's justice in that. But we must grapple with another, deeper truth. The division between worldviews has existed from the beginning of this country, which has held such high and noble ideals and struggled so intensely to live them. And it's only we who can insist on a better way. It's about us. Historian and documentary filmmaker Ken Burns spoke about this from his heart this past week. Burns has always, very purposefully, remained quiet before elections, never endorsed anybody because he values his role as a historian of fact, as something of a neutral perspective. But he made a different decision this time because he believes the stakes are so high, referencing what Mark Twain calls the rhymes of history. The rhymes of history. Burns said that the ones we hear now, ringing in our ears, authoritarianism, fascism, are chilling. He and Princeton scholar Eddie Glaude calls these impulses a through line in our history, through all of our history, that makes groups of people into scapegoats. It casts them as others, denying them rights or attacking them, or worse. It's significant, he said, that Adolf Hitler openly admired three things about America: Jim Crow laws, anti-Jewish legislation, and the attempt to exterminate the indigenous peoples of this continent. Last year, I think I mentioned in a sermon the 1939 pro-Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden, and you may have heard those rhymes this past week. That's the same through line, according to Ken Burns, but the difference is now we could go there. So no wonder we are anxious. No wonder we need to hug it out, but we need also to remember this: we have agency. We have a choice. We can dwell in the angst, which I surely do, too much. Or we can face the history. We can learn about it. We can see it in ourselves. We can do better. And we can use every bit of creativity and determination we have to rescue the dream, to reclaim it from the materials of our history. Burns says that every generation of Americans have to fight again for democracy because the through line tangles our ideals and drags them into the murkiest waters, polluted by insecurity and fear. But we would go equally amiss not to realize that the good is just as strong. It's clearly just as strong. The love is just as life-giving as the hate is life-denying. If America has been exceptional, it has been so because of the possibility in the vision. Think about it. A place ideally where people from anywhere on earth, any culture, speaking any language, can ideally call home if they are willing to live democratically. It's an America where you, whoever you are, can become part of us. When asked where he finds hope, Ken Burns says that he finds it in the same place he finds the warnings in history. For generations, we've done the fighting, we've held on to the vision, however fragile, it became at times. That extensive neo-Nazi effort of the 30s and even 40s, while the efforts were disarmed by good people, the rule of law, our better angels. Our better angels were stronger than our lesser ones. As Burns says, I've been making films about the US for a long time, but I've been making stuff about us. And what I've learned is that there is no them. The US of A, as people say, is the us of America. In coming days, as Unitarian Universalists, as people of faith, we can take refuge in each other and find an anchor in this tradition. Because whatever its shortcomings, our heritage is one that has found its identity and its strength in the best of times in its freedom and its inclusion. At our best, and we're not always at our best, but at our best we offer the shelter of acceptance and strive to make our communities safe places. Every time I drive up 3A to this church and see the rainbow flag declaring that if you are LGBTQIA+, you can find a home with us. And every time I see that, I recommit to learning how to do it. The stories of living our values are many, but there's one that some of my colleagues and I have kept thinking about in the past few days, one that sounds with the rhymes of historical hope that we need just now. Every week, we ignite a flame in the chalice sitting on the edge of the pulpit, and I know that many of you have heard the story of the origin of the chalice, but some of you have not. In the late 1930s, on the eve of the war and during the rise of Nazism, the Unitarian Service Committee, which is an arm, or was an arm, of the American Unitarian Association then, before merger, began to help Jewish and Unitarian refugees escape from Austria. They set up what was essentially an underground railroad, moving endangered individuals from one safe house to another until they could cross a border into freedom. But those were dangerous times, and refugees were understandably wary. With neighbors reporting neighbors and strangers being suspect, how would they know who to trust? The Reverend Charles Joy, director of the service committee, thought the committee needed a symbol to make its documents look official and to symbolize who they represented. And so he commissioned an Austrian refugee artist, Hans Deutsch, to create a design. Deutsch drew a chalice, which represented, he later said, freedom and sacrifice. The design was turned into a seal that appeared on all the documents of the service committee during that work and became a signal that you could trust those who carried them. A few years after the war, the American Unitarian Association adopted the chalice as the symbol of its faith tradition. And in 1962, when it merged with the Universalist Church of America, a newly designed chalice featured two intersecting circles representing the two traditions. It's my very favorite chalice of all. On Sunday mornings, congregations across the continent, across the world really, say that the chalice represents many things, from elements of the earth to community love. But historically, it grows very specifically out of the struggle of human beings to be free and the struggle of human beings to help other human beings be free. When we light that chalice, we commit to being trustworthy bearers of freedom, to keeping the promise of freedom. I don't know what the future will look like. Perhaps we will spend some years healing the wounds of a danger that we evade. Perhaps we will need to reclaim the vision entirely. Or, as Rachel Kahn implies in her poem, give birth to it again. But the longing for freedom will not die. The need to embrace our neighbor and treat them as we would be treated will not die. The knowledge that all of us come from the same source and share the same destiny, perhaps the deepest truth of all, will not die, it will prevail. And that's why we have Free Religious Community, to remember always who we are and who we want to be, and to give us the courage to become them. It could be apocryphal, but some sources say that the Underground Railroad and that on the Underground Railroad in Austria during the war, residents, owners of the houses drew chalices in the dirt outside their homes to indicate to travelers that here was a safe harbor. Let that be one vision we never have to reclaim. Let it be our heritage today, tomorrow, in the months to come, and forevermore. Amen. I'm going to invite you to rise and body our spirit and join in singing twice through number 155, Circle Round for Freedom. extinguishes the chalice, would you join in words, please? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. If we have hope of transforming the world and changing ourselves, we must be bold enough to step into our discomfort, brave enough to be clumsy there, loving enough to forgive ourselves and each other. May we as a people of faith have the strength to be so bold, so brave, and so loving. The words of Joseph M. Cherry. Please be seated.